Hey, welcome to Art with Ian. Today we're talking about 10 digital art mistakes you might be making. That's coming up next. All right, 10 digital art mistakes you might be making. Number one, working in low resolution. So if you come up here to File and create a new canvas, if you see this resolution at 72, change that to 300. That's the industry standard. And then for your pixels, if you set this to inches, you can kind of see more realistically what your actual size is. If you think about it like paper, like a piece of computer paper is what, 8.5 by 11.5 or something like that, or 8.5 by 11. So that's pretty small. I mean, I like to work on, more like 16 by 20, or, over 10 and under 20 is kind of the area. Or if you're working in pixels, think about over 3,000 and under 6,000 ish. That'll kind of keep you to low leg, not as much risk of lag, and still big enough that you can go print your work at a nice size and it'll hold up quality resolution. As well as, certain brushes you use will work better or work at all even in proper resolutions. So make sure you work at a good resolution. Number two, learning the basic tools. Don't avoid these tools. So get to know your tools, and you don't need to know a lot of them. If you try to use too many of them, you're not actually using your painting skills as a solution to issues. You're trying to use all the bells and whistles of Photoshop or whatever software you use. So there's a fine line there, but get to know the basic tools. I use the Move tool, the Lasso tool, the Eraser tool, the Marquee tool, the Eyedropper tool, and the Brush tool, and that is it. And if you come over, 99% of the time. I do use other stuff, but very rarely. Now, if you come over here and look at the tool panel here, you can actually hover over each and it'll show you a letter. If you see here that V, that's the hotkey for this tool. So if you get to know, you only have to memorize about 6 hotkeys, at least the way that I work, and you basically don't even have to come over here and click on your tools. You can hit, B for brush and I for eyedropper, or just hold down Alt and it will actually bring it up until you let go. L for the lasso tool. If you want to move stuff, instead of hitting V to move, you can just hold down Control and it'll see how the lasso is shifting to the Move tool. As long as you're holding Control, it'll be on Move, and then when you let go, it stops. So if I wanted to click on something and move it, and then I let go, and now that tool's gone, and I'm back to lasso. So that's the Move tool. The eraser is E, and the marquee tool is M. So for making selections. So basically, get to know these tools. Don't when you're new to digital art, it can be a little overwhelming. What's all this stuff around me? Well, just narrow it down to the basic tools you need, and slowly but surely you'll get to know the other little things. But those things are far less important if all you want to do is be a painter. All right, so that leads us into number 3, expecting too much from your brushes. I think just about every beginning digital artist has this. Once you get going with it, you have this moment of going, I need the brush, the brush. You see other artists doing work and you love their work and you go, what brush are they using? Their brush is amazing, their work is amazing, they must have amazing brushes. And then you end up with, I have this list from way back in the day called my everything list, and you end up with this kind of a thing where the list is insane. Granted, there are a lot of good brushes in here, but do I need all these brushes to paint? Like, no, it's completely ludicrous, totally unnecessary, and really it just slows you down. And finally, eventually, I ended up making my own brushes and created an essentials list, which is just these. That's it. That's all of them. And mostly I just use my chalky render brush, my inking brush, my texture sketch brush, and a few utility textures and stuff like that for different things. But yeah, basically almost 80-90% of the time I'm just using my chalky render brush, and that's it. So don't expect too much. Brushes aren't the magic spell that makes you good at digital art. They're a tool. You are the thing that makes you good at digital art. Just always remember the solution is you and the effort you put in. Okay, on to the next one. And staying with brushes. Overusing the airbrush. These are two paintings. I did this one from quite a while ago, and I, like most digital artists, stumbled and fell into a pile of way too much airbrush use because it's kind of easy to render you think anyways, and it's because there's a low commitment. It doesn't put down these harsh. So if you think, let's go up to these standard brushes. When you first get on Photoshop and you're looking at the main general brushes, um, if you come in here and you try out the first brush and it's this hard, you're like, oh, it's so bad, it's all super hard and digital feeling, and you hate that. That doesn't feel anything like what you're used to. And so you kind of keep exploring and you end up with on the airbrush, the soft round pressure opacity brush, and you get this like, oh, I can actually, hold on now, I can actually make some rendering things happen here. That's not bad. And so then you kind of get stuck in this world of using the airbrush for all your rendering, and that is a bad place to be because your work ends up looking like this. And not that this is like the worst thing in the world, but it's just certainly not the best. I mean, it's just so non-committal. There's no hard edges really. There's nowhere that it feels truly varied in the edge, versus this where you can tell I used a bunch of different, I mean, there are different edges for the different feelings. A face isn't all just one contour. There are hard edges. There are at places that turn hard from the light. There are places that turn softly into the light. And if you don't use different edges to show those things, then it just looks bad. So don't get stuck and caught up on the airbrush. For example, I personally like my chalky render brush, which I do have a video for making. If you're interested in that, there'll be a link up in the top corner. But I understand the wanting a good rendered feel, like something that gets you to a good gradation. But this chalky brush that I have is it has some texture, and you can actually get a pretty hard line with it. But it basically, the difference between it and the airbrush is that as you go into your lighter tones, there's some grain and there's some life to it, and then you just, holding Alt to get my color picker to come up, you can just pick colors from the grain that you've created and carry on your render. And it takes a little bit more effort to get a nice gradation from dark to another color, from between colors, but that effort is required to create something that doesn't feel like mud, so it's worth it. Okay, so that's the airbrush. Try not to overuse it. Moving on, number 5, not using or overusing layers. Now, when you first start working as a digital artist, you've never really done anything with layers, and so the whole idea might be a little bit overwhelming or weird to you. You're painting and then create a new layer. Okay, well, what does that do? Is that on top, or is it next to it? And as you work, you might say, oh, okay, so I see. Each layer I create goes on top of the last one, and so anything I paint there will cover the last layer. And then you get comfortable with how layers work, and that's where the problem starts the secondary issue. So the first issue is not really learning them and not utilizing the power of your digital software. The problem that ensues is then going crazy with these things, and every time you do something new, a new element to your painting, you create a new layer, and next thing you know, you've got a stack like this, and you didn't name them because you created them in the heat of your painting, and you have no idea where stuff is, and you go back, you're like, what layer was that on? And you end up spending a bunch of time clicking on and off all these layers, going, where is stuff? Oh, there's that one, okay. And then it gets completely insane. So Try to keep your layers to a minimum. Like, try to be a little bit more um, purposeful about when and why you create layers. If you have an idea but you're not sure about it, yeah, create a layer and try it out, see what happens. But try not to, to get so carried away with it that you're doing like a character, you're doing a portrait and you put the mole on a layer in case you don't like the mole. Like, you should know how to paint a mole out if you don't like the mole, that kind of a thing. So there's that. Okay, that leads us to 6. Trying photo bashing before you understand the fundamentals. So I see this all too much. Photo bashing is, if you don't know the fundamentals, don't learn the fundamentals. Photo bashing, if you take multiple photos taken at multiple points of view with multiple horizons and therefore perspectives are shifted and try to slap it all together, just because the elements look like they work together does not mean that it's actually working. It doesn't look good. I mean, if you've got multiple horizon lines set, even if you erase it out, it doesn't mean it changes fundamentally the element that you are using is still in that perspective. So understand your fundamentals before you try to photo bash, and quite honestly, know how to render and paint before you photo bash. Don't If you want to be an artist, you need to solve your problems as an artist, not cutting up photographs and slapping them together. All right, working zoomed in, number 7. So let's just go back to tools, or the airbrush. I'll use this as an example here. So if I wanted to, let's say, because I'm unhappy with the all the airbrush stuff that I did on this one painting, let's say I decide I want to go back over this portrait and I want to do new work to it. So I get in here and I start working and I zoom way in, and it's fine. It's okay. Like, some of the stuff I'm doing right now would be, sensible, I suppose. But if I start doing like, oh, I'm gonna get in here and I'm gonna do like a really neat little bit of variation in his eye, and then I'm gonna do all this stuff. Or let's say I want to put like on his bandana. Let's say I want to put like some little design in his pattern of his thing, And when you're all zoomed in, you're thinking, man, that's going to be cool. This is going to be great. When I first started doing digital, I was super guilty of working like this. And it's okay to even zoom in and work, but if you stay zoomed in, you get caught up and you're just living in this kind of zoomed in world, and then you zoom out, and goodbye to all of what I just did. Gone. Can't see it. So if you work too zoomed in, you're basically not doing anything a viewer will ever see or appreciate. And so just be aware of that. Anything over 150%, you're starting to lose your viewer real quick. So try not to work too zoomed in. All right, number 8, not using reference. This is kind of an oddly huge topic. I think a lot of younger artists, there's kind of some really poor concepts going around I think in the younger artist community, where it's like, you're not an artist if you use references, or you're not a good artist if you use references, or something like that. And I think there's a misconception about what using references actually is. It's not taking a picture and tracing it and coloring in it exactly like it was. That's not using a reference. That's just copying something. Using a reference is, here's a reference sheet. Okay, let's say I wanted to draw lynx. I love big cats, and I've drawn lots of them, but I'm not going to claim that I could just go, I want to draw a lynx, and just bust out a great looking lynx. They have, there's a lot of specific stuff about them. They have a specific, they're not all big cats have the exact same body with a slightly different fur. There's anatomy adjustments that need to be made. Look at how thick and stocky their legs are and their paws. I mean, that's not the same as a tiger, not quite anyway. and their ears are super unique, and they've got that, uh, awesome tuft of fur that comes down, and just the coloring. So what if I wanted to paint a lynx? I would make a sheet like this. I would pull it off to the side, and I would look at these references, and I would take a sum. Maybe I would choose one pose, but I would take a sum of kind of the references, like really loving the lighting on this one and this one, love the pose of this one, love the background of this one, or the snow of this one, right? And you use these references to help get you somewhere good with your own composition, and so that your subject is believable, and you don't have some crappy, out of your head version of a lynx that will never, unless you've drawn thousands of lynxes, will never look right. So yes, use references. It's absolutely okay to use them. It's, in fact, you should use them. If you don't, then you're doing yourself a disservice. And don't listen. If anyone tells you that you're not a good artist because you use reference, just literally ignore them. All right. Um, that leads us to 9, not using a tablet or proper software. Now, this is kind of a hot topic a little bit for some younger artists, because if you don't have the money to buy a good tablet, it can be really like, oh yeah, sure, great advice. You want to send me the $350 I need to buy like a decent baseline tablet? Yeah, I get it. It's not cheap. The problem is just like anything else. If you want to be a musician, you can't go to a garage sale and buy a $10 piece of crap guitar and expect to get good. Or expect to make good sounds. You might even get decent at it, but it's still going to sound bad. And that's just the fact of it. Things that we pursue in life, they come at a cost. And sometimes monetary, sometimes physical. If you're an athlete, by the time you're 40, your knees are probably done. And you just, in life, you have to pay for the things that you want. That's just kind of the way that it works. And so if you get serious about the idea of doing digital art, if you have to mow lawns, if you have to clean gutters, whatever it is, yeah, you have to do to get the money to get yourself the proper things you need to do good digital art, to set yourself up to succeed, do it. And you'll be proud of that digital tablet, and every painting you do on it will mean something to you, because it didn't just fall in your lap. So, and I know very well what it's like to barely have enough money to skate by. As an artist, being an artist for, doing art for a living is not an easy path to choose, but I'm passionate about it and I care about it a great deal, and so I'm willing to forego some of the things I might have if I chose a career that was, had more potential for a greater financial successfulness. But then, so I have these things, and I'm really unhappy because I have a lot of creative energy that needs to get out. Is it worth it? Is the money a worthwhile trade? Of course not. Would I rather trade, going back to the proper software and the proper tools, would I rather trade $350 for something that allows me to do my art and to express myself creatively exactly in the way I want to? Absolutely. Without question. It's not a question. Okay, and then that leads us to the last one, number 10. Trying to emulate the pros too early. Learn from them in a way that is not you trying to do one-to-one versions of their work without understanding what any of it means. Try to actually dissect their work in a far more constructive way. Instead of pointing out to yourself how you're not as good as them by trying to do what they're doing and paint what they're painting, actually break down their work. Look at it. Where's the focal point? Why is this working for me? What's the color palette? What's the perspective? If it's a creature design, what anatomy choices are they using? What kind of real world creatures did they splice together to kind of get here? Because I can assure you that's what they're doing. And pros are basically just artists like you or me or anyone else who have taken the time to truly immerse themselves in the fundamentals. all, if they like creatures, they study real world creatures. They study anatomy, how muscle works over bone, how skin works, um, different types of creatures, how they evolve, what do they have, why does an insect have an exoskeleton? All of these things, these questions, they study, they research, and they don't just trip and fall into a pile of being good at art. And so to compare yourself to those 20 years of experience that pro has and feel subpar compared to them, it's not going to help you. You should be more looking at how you can use what all of the effort they've put into their work to help bring you to their level, maybe slightly quicker, but certainly don't expect yourself to emulate their work early on in your art journey, because it'll just depress you. And also just remember that those pros that you look up to someone else. It's an endless journey of feeling. You'll never feel good enough. As soon as you feel good enough, you stop improving. So those pros, they feel the same way you do. They're just looking up at someone else. So just keep that in mind. We're all human. We're all trying to be the best we can be, and it's really important that we do feel that way. So, anyways, that's the 10. That's my list. I hope you got something out of at least some of these. I hope it inspires you to carry on and kind of work through the tough times that can kind of come at the beginning of your digital art journey. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram, and I will see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.